Early this morning, the accountant walks from the parking lot to the building where his office is. Short, brisk steps. The winter wind burns his uncovered skin, everything above his neck. He hunches his shoulders a bit and picks up his pace to get to work. But not because he is late. No. He has plenty of time to get there. He always makes sure of that. A little smile twitches across his hairless face. Everything in his life was going according to plan. His job was easier than he ever could have imagined. His bosses were dim-witted morons and trusted his analyses without question, which made embezzling money from the retirement accounts under his supervision an incredibly simple matter, more an exercise in creative rearrangement than anything. Very soon, he and his beautiful wife of 5 months would be able to leave this harsh climate for carefree tropical living in the equatorial seas. As the accountant's mind begins to wander with thoughts of living the good life in paradise, he walks headfirst into someone else at full speed. The other person's reaction is instant, exaggerated, and unrestrained by the bounds of normal sidewalk etiquette. The collision becomes a disorienting tangle of long limbs and matted hair and layers of weather-beaten clothing. It's all too sudden and confusing for the accountant's mind to grasp. His voice catches in his throat. He loses his balance, slips, and falls. Hip, elbow, shoulder, and back hit the pavement with jarring force. His briefcase goes skittering into the street. A city bus speeds by and runs over it. Tires slam into a pothole. Dirty snow and slush splash all over. The awful stench of the other person fills the accountant's nose. His stomach turns. Lost to his daydreams, the accountant had run into a filthy, stinking bum. A hard, calloused hand grips and presses down on the accountant's face. A knee digs into his chest. The full weight of the other wretched man bends his ribs, stops his breath. Then, without warning, the hand and the weight are gone. The accountant moves to wipe the cold, dirty snow from his face so he can see his risen assailant and begin to complain, but a swift kick in the gut curls him into the fetal position. "Watch where you're going," the vagrant complains with his raspy, strangled voice. He draws in a loud, rippling snort, the kind of snort that loosens the meatiest clumps of hardened snot from deep inside the skull. Trembling with intimidation, the accountant moves his hands just a few centimeters to try to get a look at his attacker, but the bum kicks him again, this time in the face. Only the accountant's shivering hands prevent his nose from being broken. Even still, he yells out in pain. His nose fills with fluid, and his eyes blur with tears. Then, with a horrifying noise, the bum launches a large glob of mucus from his mouth. It splats all over the side of the accountant's brow. "Ah!" The accountant yells out. He jerks away from the impact, smacks his head into the rock-hard pavement, and cringes in pain. The morning rush hour crowd passes by like river rapids around a stone. A few beings almost pause with half a concern, but no one stops to offer a hand or ask about the accountant's condition. They aren't the police, they reason. It isn't their responsibility. And no one chases the vagrant down or gives him a scolding as he strides away. It's too much trouble to get involved, and everyone is either too busy or too cold to stick around. Besides, the altercation is already over. By the time the accountant builds up the courage to wipe his face and look up again, the bum is long gone. Frustrated, the accountant wonders what the other man looks like. He can't go to the authorities to file an assault charge without a description. He stands slowly, sneezes. An angry vein throbs across his forehead. Rushing crowds trample past. No one meets his eye. This has turned out to be a terrible morning. 2 blocks away, the vagrant finds another wet, warm sewer grate to settle onto, in an alleyway between 2 skyscraping buildings in the financial district. Sitting cross-legged and enveloped by steaming vapor rising off the laggard flow of waste below, he sticks his hand into the hip pocket of his outermost coat and pulls out the accountant's wristpad S-Link. He fiddles with it a bit, activates its projected interface, and turns on its speaker function. Then he looks up the address of a wealthy and influential bride-to-be and places a call to her building. Later this morning, the promising young designer looks with dread at her S-Link, a little bronze-colored device she's customized to resemble a soft-petaled flower. A rising panic shimmers in the designer's eyes as she watches the thin, multicolored light flow around its delicate edges, the signal for a waiting message. The promising young designer throws a quick look toward the window at the end of the hall, swallows past her fear, strokes one of the S-Link's outer petals, and speaks the command word to retrieve the message. She glances at the window again. The small audio implant in her right middle ear crackles with a microsecond of static, and then begins the message playback. Her eyes go wide, then close tightly as she listens. Tears run down the sides of her nose. She hangs her head with quiet sobs of joy. About an hour before, the wealthy and influential bride-to-be left a message to postpone her viewing of the dress. Earlier this morning, some nutcase called in a bomb threat to her building, and everyone had to be evacuated for safety. A team of special tactical ops police burst onto the floor of the offices of a high-profile financial company. They streamed through the aisles between cubicles, hushing the puzzled reactions of the seated low-level employees they pass. Pausing on one side of the door for the executive manager of retirement accounts, the two officers at point give the all-clear for the ram man. The huge officer holding the compact ram just off his hip launches forward into an explosion of motion. His charge ends in one fluid movement as he swings the compact ram headlong into the door's handle and spins away from the opening. Not built for this kind of punishment, half the door for the executive manager of retirement accounts shatters. Its pieces fly all over the executive's office. The 2 point men rush in, yelling commands, their small assault weapons at shoulder height, their heads tucked behind gun sights. 4 other tactical officers floor around cubicles and into the executive's office shouting brief acknowledgments to the point men and additional commands to their target. And that target, the accountant, who had just ended a loving call with his beautiful wife of 5 months, is utterly surprised and confused. He is then beaten, taken into custody, and driven to a remote holding facility. A bomb threat from earlier in the morning was traced to his wristpad S-Link, which was found in a dumpster behind his building. The accountant's superiors, having been given no explanation for the morning's alarming developments, decide to peruse the accountant's work activity with the help of his computer's AI. Astonished at the magnitude of the accountant's illegal maneuverings, his superiors order their assistants to arrange for a press conference on the following morning. They seclude themselves in meetings with lawyers and their PR team for the rest of the day, in order to devise the best way to distance the high-profile financial company from the accountant and his misdeeds. Big puffy white clouds slide reluctantly across the sky. Low on the horizon, one of them meanders over to block the dawning blue light of Rayrig Prime. The cloud's irregular shadow darkens a quarter of the city. A wind picks up and blows stinging drifts of snow through the muted light of the morning streets. The temperature drops by a few degrees. Fast-walking, rush-hour crowds slow down to brace themselves. Collars get pulled tighter to protect against the painful, icy spray. Street-side fry cooks stand a bit closer to their grills. It's just like yesterday. In a touristy part of town, near a loading dock on the side of a spotless new shopping center, a sewer grate vents a thick fog of life-saving heat over and around a slumbering form. He has turned away from the street today, yet somehow wind-blown ice finds its way into his cardboard shelter to bring little pinpricks of pain to the ancient leather of his face. He wakes after a while to glare through a break in the makeshift shelter, not focused on anything, or rather, focused on what lies beyond the here and now. He was dreaming of the past before he woke. Later this morning, he'll watch a newscast while sitting at the front counter in Gary's diner. Gary pours him his first cup of coffee for the morning. The big news of the day is all about yesterday's arrest of an accountant accused of threatening to bomb a building in a wealthy neighborhood uptown. And in a surprising turn of events, the high-profile financial company the accountant works for, or rather, worked for, has announced that its lawyers will be arranging to prosecute the accountant in a separate trial for gross criminal embezzlement.
"That's what you get, you rotten bastard,"
the vagrant wheezes. Other than that, no news of any note is reported, which seems different than it should. Better, somehow.